Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of Boredom Busters with the Lincoln Children's Museum. Today is Saturday, and we are going to be learning about the polar regions today, because yesterday, on the 15th, was Endangered Species Day. So we're learning a little bit about different endangered environments and different endangered species. Now, just to remember, a species is a type of animal. All animals are a species, but they are, you can say there's a species of mammal, which is a dog. There's a species of mammal, which is a cat. There's a species of reptile, that is a lizard. So there are some species that live really well and they don't have any problems. There are so many of them and they have enough to eat and enough places to live. But there are some other species that have a hard time surviving. And some of those we call endangered because they are in danger of going extinct. So today we are thinking about the frozen regions of our Earth, and there are some places where summer is just as cold as winter and the ice never melts around the year. Those places, we have a spot on the top of our globe that is the Arctic, and on the bottom is the Antarctic. So Antarctica is a continent on the bottom of our globe where it is cold all year round, and that's where the penguins live. And then up north is the Arctic, and there it is also cold all year round, and that region is where the polar bears live. So polar bears live way up here in the ice and snow. Penguins live way down here in the ice and snow. They never meet each other because they are too far apart. To get from one polar region to the other, you'd have to cross through the equator with the hot jungles. So they live in different areas. Now, for our printable today, we have another one of these fun scenes. So yesterday we had that North American forest scene, and today we have an iceberg scene. And there's Kazoo. Now, we actually have some animals from the Arctic and some from the Antarctic. So here, let's see what we have here. I cut them out and put them into this envelope. Ooh, all right, so the polar bears. The polar bears live up north, and so does the walrus. And let's see, the snowy owl. And there, we've got the snowy owl. They all live up north. But we also have some penguins. And penguins, as we know, live down south. So we can do a fun story scene here about living up north. We can do one about living down south. And if you'd like, you could tell a story about how one day they ended up meeting each other. We also have some fish, because there is a lot of water. Even though there's ice, there's still water, as the ocean is so salty that it doesn't freeze. Let's think about in the winter time when we put salt out on the roads, and we do that to help it not freeze over. Because if the water is too salty, the salt gets in the way of that water crystallizing into ice. So there's still a lot of water. And for our story today, our recommendation is The Polar Bears Are Hungry by Carrick. And in this story, you learn about some of the things that are going badly for polar bears right now. As you may have heard that the Earth is getting a little bit warmer. And what happens to ice when it's warm outside? Well, the ice melts. And all these animals live on the ice and rely on the ice. So this talks about some of the things that are going on with the polar bears right now. It's a very cute story. I definitely recommend giving it a listen. Now for our video recommendation today, we have How Glaciers Change the World from Scishow Kids. And so a glacier is what a sheet of ice is called if the ice doesn't melt for years and years and years. So there are glaciers up north and down south, but there are also glaciers on top of many of the tall mountains around the world. So when the snow layers and layers and layers, and it compresses, it squishes down, and it gets really hard and dense, and it stays frozen for sometimes hundreds and hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years. Now, for our song recommendation, we have Adventures Through the Snow, which is just a fun little story in song with all of these characters traveling through the snow. I would like to remind everybody that we are doing our hashtag heartfelt rewards. So whenever you see us post something, hashtag heartfelt rewards, go ahead, repost it, tag a friend, and make some comments about what a heartfelt reward and what that means to you. You'll be entered to win and be our featured friends, and you might win a membership. All right, now we have 3 activities for you today. Now the first one I will show you here, it is from the giftofcuriosity.com. It is a free download, but you do need to account with them first. Now I printed it out, and it's built for, there are these cubes that are used in some classrooms that you can slide the papers into the sides, you can roll it like a dice. But there are fun little activities on here. Can you hop like an Arctic hare? Can you wriggle on your belly like a harp seal? And so there are a few here. You can download that, or you can just come up with some things yourself. It's a fun way to move your body. Now, right here, we're going to think about the ice that we have on our poles. Now, did you know that Antarctica, the one on the South Pole, is actually a continent made out of rock and dirt, just like North America? So it has ground underneath the ice, basically. So for this one will be the South Pole. So I put a nice big rock in there. I got one that has some flat surfaces on it. Now you can also use Play-Doh or clay. I found though that when I tried it with Play-Doh, the Play-Doh kind of spread out as it got wet underwater. So I decided to do it with a rock this time. Now, the South Pole is on top of rock, but the North Pole is actually just floating ice. So there's no rock in there. Now, we are going to be thinking about what happens to the level of the ocean when the ice caps start to melt. Now here in Nebraska, in the middle of the continent, we don't have to worry too much about rising sea levels. But places along the coast, they might go underwater. So let's take a look and see. Now, I have ice, 2 identical containers, some water that I dyed blue just for fun. Got my rock in here, and I also have a permanent marker. Now what we're gonna do here, you wanna pour some water in until it's about halfway up the side of the rock or Play-Doh, whatever it is that you're using. And then put some ice cubes on top. So let's see how many I can fit on here. There's 2, 3. So what do you think will happen to the water level as this ice starts to melt? So I'm going to draw a line right here at the surface level of the water. So when I come back to check on it, I can see if the sea level rose. All right, now I'm going to pour some water into this container. And I'll make a mark on the side of this one too. Now, if you don't want to mark on the side of your container, you can use some tape, but really, even permanent marker comes off pretty easily. All you need is a little bit of rubbing alcohol, or you can even color it over again with the marker. All right, so that's where the water level was before I put in 4 ice cubes. I want to use the same amount of ice as on the South Pole. So that's how much water is in there now. Now, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that the water level is going to rise more when the southern ice melts or when the northern? While we wait, let's come over here and we can do another activity. Now this one is pretty fun. It's a cute little activity where we're going to be making a polar bear. Now this is a fun way to make some textured paint. All you need is some shaving foam and glue. Now if you don't have the foam kind, if you just have the gel kind, you'll just have an extra step where squirt that into the container and then whip it up into a froth first before you try to add the glue. So, get some of this in here. There we go. So there's my foam. And now let's get some glue in here too. There we go. That should be good. You want about equal amounts. So the glue will help the foam not deflate. Because if you just squirt some foam onto the table or into a container, over time, those air bubbles will leave. But the glue will help to harden it. So there we go. And I've got a nice glue and foam mixture. And we will go ahead and just put that onto our plate. Now, different brands of foam will do a different thing as well. Maybe some of the more expensive kind will hold its shape a little bit better than some of the less expensive kind. And now, I'm just putting this around, making it textured like a polar bear's fur. Now, I'm using a paper plate here to put the foam and glue mixture on, because it's nice and sturdy. So if you don't have a paper plate, try some cardboard, because this is a heavy, wet mixture. All right, so there's my polar bear's face, all covered in its frothy, gluey fur. Now we need some ears and eyes and a nose. Now, the link that we have, it suggests using some of those cosmetic pads where they're round, little like cotton balls, but they're flat and round. Now, I didn't have any of those, but I did have some of this sparkly white felt, so I'm going to use this. For the ears, I'm just going to cut a circle around here, and I doubled it up so that the ears would be the same size, and I didn't have to trace the first one. Now, if you would like to trace your ears, a small juice glass, or maybe a lotion lid, something that's about 2 inches across. And that will be just the right size for the ears for your polar bear. All right? Now, here we go. And since this is glue and shaving foam, it will stick just fine. So there are our ears. Now we need our eyes. Let's see. So a white background for the eyes. And this one, let's see. How big should I make these eyes today? Actually, probably just about the same size as the ears. So if you do have those little cosmetic pads, you can probably use those for the eyes as well. All right, there are my eyes. Now, this white felt that I have, it's sparkly on one side and not sparkly on the other side. Now, I did the sparkles for the ears, but for the eyes, I think I'm going to do the non-sparkly side. All right, there are the whites of my polar bear's eyes. Here's a little bit of black felt. And I'm going to make some smaller circles to go into the middle of those bigger white circles for the pupils. And then I will need to make one for the nose also. Now, if you don't have the felt or the cosmetic pads, try using paper. I would try maybe a thicker paper if you have it, just so that it doesn't get too soggy. And when paper gets soggy, it can get kind of weird, kind of wonky. All right, now I'm just going to use, to get this on here, I'm going to use a little bit more, a little bit left over of this mixture. There's one eye. Now let's get the other eye. And a nose. And polar bears have pretty big noses, so I'm going to cut a nice big, kind of oval actually, because their nose isn't quite square or circular like the eyes or the ears. So here we go. Trim off those little fur edges there, and there is my polar bear. Now, as it dries, you will see some fun textures in there. All right, let's take a look. I'm not sure if enough time has passed in our oceans. Now I notice, probably because it was sitting in the water, those 4 ice cubes at the North Pole have almost completely melted. But has the water level gone up? Well, that second line is where I drew when I put in those ice cubes, so I'm not really noticing any real sea level rise there. But even though these ice cubes have not melted a whole lot, you can see on the rock where there's a little trickle of water that has come down the side. So that means that they've melted a little bit. And I can tell, look at that, the sea level has risen. And that's even, these ones haven't melted nearly as much as on the North Pole, but the sea level is already rising. So try this out at home, see what your results are. Now, another interesting thing that I'm just going to throw in there since we're done with this tub, let's take a look. So if I have an ice cube, how much of it is underwater and how much is it above water? So put it in there. Look at that. So all of that ice, almost all of it, is underneath the surface of the water. So when you see an iceberg out on the ocean, you're only seeing the tiniest bit of it. Most of it is underwater. There's actually, it's always the same amount. So a huge amount of it is underwater and just a tiny bit is on top, even when it's floating. Now, I do have a joke for you today, Miss Katie.
Okay.
What do polar bears eat for lunch?
I don't know, Miss Greta. What?
Iceburgers. All right, have a nice day, everybody. I hope you all have been tuning in to Read Aloud Lincoln for their story times. Check out their Facebook page for a little bit more information about what time and which of the librarians will be reading to you. And I also wanted to just let everybody know that we have a lot of fun things in the works here, so keep an eye out. We're putting together some fun kits and experiences in a box that you'll be able to buy from us and have a lot of fun with the Children's Museum at home.